Hello everyone, this session is going to be moderated by myself. I'm consultant physiotherapist and the future president of the Society of Back Pain Research, and I'm also joined by Dr. Jerry Draper-Roddy, who is an osteopath and is the current treasurer of the Society of Back Pain Research. I have great pleasure in introducing Professor Sally Lamb, who is an internationally recognised scholar in aging, disability and rehabilitation. Sally is an Associate Dean for Research and the Professor of Health Innovation in Exeter. She was previously the Director of the Centre for Statistics in Medicine, the Oxford Clinical Trials Research Unit and the Centre for Rehabilitation and Research at the University of Oxford. She is a trustee of Versus Arthritis and has had senior roles with the HTA and the National Institute for Health Research. Sally's work has transformed how spinal pain is managed today, including influential trials such as BEST, PROVE and MINT. And today Sally will tell us more about the aging spine and the findings of the recent BOOST trial. I'm going to start the presentation now.
Thank you for the invitation to talk. I'm going to talk today about low back pain and old age. I'm going to ask two questions. Is there anything we should do? And is there anything we can do? I will also be presenting the findings of an NIHR-funded multi-centre trial, the Better Outcomes for Older People with Spinal Trouble trial, which has examined two conservative treatment options for older people with neurogenic claudication. Musculoskeletal pain, including osteoarthritis, is the most common health problem of later life. The data in this slide are analyses by Esther Williamson and Maria Sanchez from our group in Oxford, using the Oxford Pain and Lifestyle Survey, which was collected in 2017 and 18, involving 5,500 respondents across England. On the right-hand side is a table which shows a league table of common musculoskeletal symptoms by site. And what you can see is that low back pain is right there at the top of the table for men on the left-hand side and women on the right as the most common site of pain. So 42% of men and 47% of women have reported lower back pain. And this was quite substantially more common than pain in the knees at 35% and 40%. And then even further down the league table, hip and thigh pain at 22 and 31%. So back pain is certainly common for older people. And if we look at the graph on the left-hand side of the slide, in the grey we can see people with no back pain, and the data are presented here for deciles of age 65 to 74 years, 75 to 84 years, and 85 or more years. And as I've already said, the grey is no back pain. The light blue is back pain only. The dark blue is back pain with leg pain, and the black is back pain with stenotic leg pain. And what you can see is that the prevalence of back pain doesn't really increase over these later deciles of life, but what does change is the prevalence of these more complicated presentations of back pain, and particularly in the emergence of stenotic leg pain over the increasing age years. So does this matter? I mean, it's a really important question. And this is more data from the OPAL survey, which looks at the cross-sectional associations between adverse health outcomes and different types of lower back pain. It's consistent with what we already know from some other international studies, but it expands the range of outcomes examined. If we look at the very bottom of the graph with the green, we can see that for those with lower back pain only, there are moderate, statistically significant increased risks of loss of confidence to walk, falls, frailty, self-reported mobility decline, urinary incontinence, and poor sleep quality. As we move upwards to look at back pain and leg pain, excluding stenosis, this is the blue bars, we can see the relative risks rise for all of these adverse health outcomes. And then if we go further up, we can see with the red bars is the back pain with stenotic leg pain. And we can see here that the risks again are substantial. And if we have a look at the risk of confidence to walk or lack of confidence to walk, we can see that that's a really substantial risk. So these analyses are adjusted for other known risk factors and are therefore the independent effects of low back pain. And these, as I've already said, these are important outcomes for older people. Mobility is an essential survival skill, and these associations alongside other evidence suggest that lower back pain should be addressed in older people. Later life is a time of life when we can see distinctive pathological changes in the spine, including degenerative changes, narrowing of the spinal canal, loss of spinal alignment, disc herniation, and disc thinning. What we don't know is the exact correlations between imaging and structural changes in the spine and functional impairments. Likewise, as people get older, we see more frequent cases of osteoporosis with substantial loss of bone mineral density in the spine, particularly but not limited to women. And I'll briefly remind you that vertebral compression fractures are a source of substantial disability and pain to older women. There are other things happening as we age. There is a generalized loss of muscle mass that occurs at different rates in different people. The slide on the left-hand side shows a cross-section of the thigh at age 35 and age 63 years. To the eye, there is a substantial difference in the volume of muscle and in fat and fatty infiltration of the muscle. There is also loss of motor units, particularly type 2 fibers that can produce powerful muscle contractions. There is rearrangement of motor end plates leading to loss of coordination of the muscle contraction and again, further loss of power. The large postural muscles are disproportionately affected. The implication of these changes are substantial. The ability of the muscle to generate force per unit area of volume decreases. This is known as sarcopenia. There is a direct link to frailty. As muscle bulk decreases, the important functions that muscle has in maintaining homeostasis, particularly metabolic control, begin to fail. Older people are more vulnerable to cold, less able to fight off infection, and less able to metabolize various substrates. Their mobility declines and the frailty circle is perpetuated. The graph on the right, although a schematic, is evidence-based. For the great majority, muscle mass and strength increases in the first 2 decades of life, peaking in early adulthood. The level of mass attained does vary by sex and is partially genetically determined, but also modified substantially by physical activity, exercise, and exposure to other positive stressors. Once muscle mass and strength peaks in early adulthood, it then flattens off for a while and then begins to decline. And this decline occurs at various different rates, depending again on physical activity and lifestyle. We know that there is a fixed ratio of strength and a range of other physiological variables to different types of function. In this figure, this is defined as the disability threshold, the level at which decline in muscle mass, and in this instance, renders tasks impossible. Chair rising is a really good example. If muscle mass and strength declines below or into this level, then functional impairment ensues. Changes in the sensory motor system means people are more prone to fall and less likely to be able to catch themselves from a fall. Importantly, we know that in healthy older people, we can partially ameliorate some of these problems. So whilst not all structural and physiological changes can be reversed, it is still possible to train and improve many aspects of muscular function. How much pain and other factors prevent this from happening is largely unknown, and this has important implications for clinical practice. This is just a brief reminder that age-associated decline is not limited to the main organs of the musculoskeletal system. In particular, cognitive impairment becomes a greater issue as people age, and this includes many syndromes like mild cognitive impairment, mild behavioural impairment, as well as dementia. And I would just highlight that managing pain and musculoskeletal pain is a challenge because people's ability to verbalise pain to express pain becomes more challenging, and also pain can lead to other symptoms like quite significant agitation and depression. So it is a challenging area of clinical practice. So whilst all of these things are going on, strange things happen with consultation for lower back pain as we age. This is a slide from Gary McFarlane's work looking at consultation patterns, and it shows a decline in consultation when the incidence of low back pain is peaking. Older consultants are more likely to consult with higher levels of pain. So what you can see on the blue line is that we can see the consultation rate declining, and on the red line we can see the proportion of consultants who have more serious forms of low back pain. What we don't know is what the symptomatic profile of non-consultants is, but qualitative data that we have collected suggests that some older people don't consult as they are not confident that treatment options can deliver outcomes, and that symptoms are due to old age and are not modifiable by treatment. So just to summarise, lower back pain is the most common site of musculoskeletal pain in later life. We know that it is associated with a number of adverse outcomes, and there are important questions about how reversible these changes are in the presence of and absence of clearly identifiable pathology. Worryingly, clinical trials tend not to include older people, and this is also the case in the field of low back pain. This is data from Carafadello and is a systematic review looking at the maximum age inclusion of participants of clinical trials. And what it shows is that the average age is 65, so that's the average upper limit is 65, and occasionally this rises to 70. And I can say, coming from a field of geriatric rehabilitation, 70 is not old. So there have been a number of groups across the world who've been trying to focus on generating evidence to inform practice around the management of lower back pain with older people, and we are just one of those groups. BOOST is one of a number of trials being undertaken at the moment, and our focus is on neurogenic claudication. To provide an orientation, this is a randomized controlled trial where the endpoints are masked from the assessors and the researchers, but the interventions cannot be masked from the participants. We've compared best practice advice delivered by a physiotherapist with a more intensive exercise and behavioural intervention also delivered by a physiotherapist. We measured a range of outcomes over 12 months, including the Oswestry Disability Index, ODI, the 6-minute walk test, the short physical performance battery, and falls. We've studied variables for mediation analysis, safety, and also outcomes at 6, 12, and 24 months. And today I'm going to concentrate on the 12-month outcomes. This is the flowchart for the study. We recruited and randomized 435 community dwelling older people with neurogenic claudication, which was confirmed by a clinical examination of a physiotherapist. The participants, most of them also had an MRI scan, but it was not a requirement that there was evidence of spinal stenosis on the MRI. 143 patients were randomized to best practice advice and 292 to the intervention. Of the 143 in best practice advice, 140 received their intervention, and 279 out of 292 received some or all of the group exercise intervention. So the uptake of the interventions was good within the trial. We used an unbalanced randomization to fill the groups, and follow-up was 92% at 12 months for best practice advice and 93% for the exercise group. So that was a really good rate of follow-up, and congratulations to the team who've run this trial. So what did the average participant look like? Well, we recruited a wide range of participants. 57% were women and 43% were men. The average participant was a woman of age 75 years. She was white, and she had at least two chronic conditions in addition to neurogenic claudication, most commonly arthritis and high blood pressure. She reported very troublesome low back pain on the troublesomeness scale, multi-site pain, a high ODI score of 32.3, and could walk 255 meters in 6 minutes. To put that into context, this is substantially lower distance than people with chronic obstructive airways disease and bronchiectasis, and they manage on average to walk about 325 to 350 meters. So it's, this is significant limitation of walking distance and endurance. Let's just have a look at the interventions in a little bit more detail. The best practice physiotherapy advice focused on self-management of symptoms and was a one-to-one session that included advice on exercise and general physical activity. We allowed up to 3 short sessions, but most people had 2 sessions, one of assessment and then one of follow-up advice. The exercise was not supervised or progressed. The comparator was the Boost group intervention. This was up to 12 sessions of group exercise, which was integrated with behavioural interventions. The group sessions were designed to help participants engage with exercise, build confidence, challenge unhelpful beliefs about pain, develop independent exercise habits, and to learn behavioural strategies. The sessions were scheduled over 3 months, and participants were expected to do home exercises both during the programme and at the end of the programme. We used telephone calls to maintain some motivation sessions after the end of the active intervention. The behavioural intervention was based on the back skills training trial intervention, which we've previously shown to be effective in younger and older adults. And this was integrated into the programme. It wasn't as full as the best intervention, but I think that we used many of the principles that we had used previously. What did differ was that we used a substantially more intensive and supervised element of exercise training. And this slide just summarises some of those elements of that exercise training. So we included lower limb progressive strength training and mobility training that was designed to challenge the balance systems. And this shows a schema of some of the balance challenges that we gave. So if we start at the bottom, we asked people to do fast walking around 2 orange cones, and this was really to test the limits of their postural stability. They could then have a rest for a little while, and then we would ask them to walk in and out of cones, and that was designed to enhance turning abilities. Then some exercises over the steps, and finally some stepping related exercises as well. So participants would complete this circuit several times within one session. For those with more limited walking ability, we had a separate track, which was more simple, just walking from one chair to another chair. So let's have a look at the results. Well, the Oswestry Disability Index, the total score, was the primary outcome at 12 months. What we can see here is in the solid line is the best practice advice group, and we see a rise of about 2 points in the ODI over the 12-month period, and that is a worsening of the condition. We can see that the intervention, the exercise arm, has had a statistically significant improvement in the ODI of 4 points at 6 months, but only a 1 point difference at 12 months. So it was not statistically significant at 12 months. If we had a look at the walking subscale, which is used as a co-primary in many trials, we observed walking distance was significantly improved at both 6 and 12 months. And this was echoed in the findings of the 6-minute walk test. And again, the same, we've got the best practice advice in the solid line, and the dashed line is the group exercise programme, and we observed a statistically significant and clinically significant improvement in walking distance at 6 and 12 months. And what we can see is really a rapid improvement over the first 6 months, and then a little bit of a decline from that point, but that decline is at the same rate as the best practice advice only arm. So we've kind of lifted people up, and then they begin to decline a little bit thereafter. Looking at the short physical performance battery, we saw an improvement in physical function at 6 and 12 months, driven by an improvement in chair standing ability. And a half a point here is a clinically significant finding. And that was encouraging. This is a commonly used outcome measure in geriatric rehabilitation. And finally, in terms of clinical outcomes, we saw a good reduction in falls rate over the 12 months. So it's a 37% reduction in falls, and that was also statistically significant. We undertook a health economic analysis from a UK NHS and societal perspective. In comparison to best practice alone, the exercise groups were cost effective. The group intervention resulted in a higher quality of life at a slightly higher cost when we looked at it from a health services perspective. But when we looked at it from a societal perspective, the group intervention improved health-related quality of life and actually reduced costs overall. And this was because people in the intervention arm got back to either caring or not needing as much care themselves, or going back to work. So overall, it saved money. If we look at it from a health services perspective, there's a 78% probability of being cost effective at current levels of willingness to pay. The health economic analysis is sensitive to the assumptions about numbers in the groups, and this has important implications for the delivery of the groups. The more participants in the group, the better, and we would recommend a minimum of 6 and upward to 10. Quality of life gains were driven by significant improvements in usual activity, and cost metrics were better for men, but this is not really of any practical value. We did notice that men also tended to gain more in terms of their walking distance. So the protocol paper and the intervention paper have already been published, and I'll just summarise the findings again. We demonstrate that there are important gains from a low-cost group exercise intervention in comparison to best practice advice only. We would anticipate, if compared to no intervention, the differences would be larger. And we noted a tendency for the exercise arm participants to engage in less frequent exercise than the best practice arm over the follow-up period. Parallel qualitative information suggests participants find it hard to transition off the programme, and stretching out the number of sessions over a longer time or enhancing the session numbers may enable the effects to be sustained over a longer time period. The most common reason for not attending was intercurrent illness, and it is important that strategies are in place to help people to start exercising again if they've had to stop. So I want to say thank you to all of the people who participated in the trial. This is the core team who led the trial, but there's also the 15 NHS trusts and the various physiotherapy departments that have participated in the study. I think we're proud to be able to bust some of the myths that relate to not being able to change physical function at all in neurogenic claudication and spinal stenosis. And I just say that there's quite a lot more interesting information to come from the study in a variety of aspects. So finally, please do contact me if you have any further questions. My email address is here, s.e.lamb@exeter.ac.uk. Well, we've just been awarded the British Orthopaedic Clinical Trials Collaborative at Exeter, and I would be really pleased to hear from people who have dreams of doing clinical trials and would like to turn those dreams into reality. So thank you very much. Thank you for your attention.
Jerry, you're on mute. We've only got 2 minutes left for questions, if you'd like to.
Okay, that's great. So Sally, if you could join us, if you could turn your webcam on and mic on. Thank you very much for a very interesting presentation. I don't know if Sally's with us. I know she's with us, but Sally, can you are you able to answer a few questions? We just have 2 minutes, but I think Sally is maybe having some technical difficulties. She's typing in the chat at the moment.
Yeah, if she's typing in the chat, I think we'll allow her to answer Q&As individually. The chat will be open for her to answer Q&As running into the next session, but may I suggest that we end this